Hello lovely viewers and welcome to another Yarn dialogue tutorial. Although you could actually use this tutorial I'm going to show you now with any dialogue system you've got set up. Presumably you've got, typewriter text animation anyway. If your dialogue system has text appearing in complete sentences, this probably won't be much use to you, this tutorial, but any sort of typewriter style system you will probably get on fine with it. Anyway, this system I've got set up here is from the last video I made. So if you haven't got a dialogue system set up and you want to do this with me today, you're going to need a simple dialogue system, and I recommend following that tutorial first. It's only 19 minutes long and you end up with a full dialogue system with options that closes on its own at the end and launches with a button press. It's all going on. Here today, though, I've disabled the options events because we're not doing anything with options and branching today. We're just focusing on the sound of the main text appearing. So we're going to create a new sub-event under this event here. Dialogue line is text. And it appears at the bottom, which is fine. I've experimented, and you can actually have it anywhere in this block. The order doesn't really seem to matter, but having it at the end because it's a new thing seems to make sense to me. So our first condition for this new sub event of this, we're going to have clip text as completed scrolling. So I'm just going to copy paste that, but I'm going to invert it. So what it means now is when clip text hasn't completed scrolling. So in other words, when your text is still going blip, 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 blip along or something like that, we're not going to use blips. Right, and the second condition, this is really quite straightforward, by the way. It's nice and easy, but I will explain how it works rather than just chucking the event on the screen. I do. That's why my videos tend to be longer than perhaps some tutorials, because I like to understand it myself so that I can explain it properly to you, because I don't like using things in my game that I don't understand. And they might work, but if I don't understand it, that means that if something goes wrong, I won't be able to fix it. So I only tend to use things in my own game that I understand. And that's the way I approach tutorials as well. I'll never show you something that I don't understand myself, because then when you comment afterwards and say, oh, I didn't manage to make it work, I don't understand this, I wouldn't have a clue how to help you, because if I don't understand it myself, I can't help anybody. So anyway, that's enough about my philosophy of life. Right. Now, the second action is sound on channel. Where are we? Sound. A sound is stopped. That's what I wanted. And I'm going to use channel 0. This will make more sense in a minute when I do my action. But essentially, when a sound on channel 0 has stopped, when there's no sound playing on channel 0, we can do something here. And I'll explain the channel 0 stuff in a minute. Now, often you might just use play a sound in your game, a sound effect that happens when something collides with something or somebody presses a button, and that's great. It's as a basic sort of way to chuck a sound out there. But if you want to do more with your sound, if you want to test whether it's paused or you want to see whether it's stopped, you want to be able to target it with other events, you need to use something a bit different, and it's play a sound on a channel. And it's very similar, but you can give it a channel number that you can then use later to target for different things. But let's first choose a sound file. Now I'm going to choose the sound blah. I was having a lot of fun yesterday making sounds and downloading sounds, and I'll include a link to this blah blah. Actually, it's from freesounds.org, I believe. I'll put a link to it. They've got some great stuff, and a lot of their stuff you can use even without attribution. It's free to use, so it's really cool. But obviously, always check that before you use something you intend to charge money for. So we're going to use blah. Now, I found that sounds work best with this gibberish if they're quite short sounds. So let me just show you. Let's play this blah. Blah. So blah. It's very short sound. It's probably less than half a second. Can't tell you exactly without opening Audacity and things. But very short sound. Blah. So they work best. So, you could have a quack, you could have a meow, you could have blah, blah. You can have, I don't know, some electronic sound if you want a robot to be speaking, whatever it is, but it needs to be short. Otherwise, it won't work very well. It will work, but it'll sound weird. Now, I'm going to go with volume, 50 to start with, so that I don't accidentally make it sound too loud. Now, let me first show you what happens if we just give it a default pitch of 1, which is how the sound sounds originally without any changes made to it. So let me show you how that sounds in the game. Blah, 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 blah. So there you go, pretty boring, but this works, and it plays the sound in our assigned channel with our assigned channel there, and it waits for it to stop and plays it again as long as clip text is scrolling at the time. So, but it's pretty boring. What we want is to vary the pitch to create that classic sort of gibberish sound. So we're going to use random with step. Oops. 1, which is the lowest pitch we want, and the second number is the highest pitch we want, which is 1.5 in this case. And the third number we provide is the steps. So in this case, 0.1. So what that means is our lowest number will be 1, the highest possible will be 1.5, and it will go in steps of 0.1. And what that means is 6 numbers are possible, and only 6 in this case, because I've locked it down with this step. And let's show you what that sounds like. Well, I can't show you what it sounds like. I can play, let you hear it. So there you go. Now I found that's the best way to do it. I did experiment with a few other things. Let me show you other randoms. Random in range I played with first, and I thought let's give it 1 and 6. Because that's only 6 numbers. We want a difference, don't we, between the normal and a more high-pitched one. So I went with that. And let me show you how that sounds. Oh, that sounds wrong, doesn't it? Show you how it sounds. Anyway. So that's quite bonkers. That's no good. So I thought, let's lower this upper range then. Let's put it down to 3. But that's only 3 possible sounds. But, we might have to go with that. Let's try that. And that's still terrible, because the difference between regular pitch and 3 is huge. They sound so different from each other. So then I thought, well, why don't I use floating numbers? Let's use a random here we go, random float in range. And then I can give it sort of smaller numbers. I can give it 1, I could give it 1.5. And the difference between 1 and 1.5 is not nearly as big as the difference between 1 and 3, and certainly in terms of how different they sound. So I tried that. And this actually works quite well. So there you go. You might be thinking, well, that sounds like what we were doing to begin with. Well, it is, except I found out that the possible numbers between 1 and 1.5 have 16, I believe, decimal digits after the decimal place. So I thought, I don't want it having that many possibilities. I want to lock it down. I want maybe, I want the decimal number to just be 1 decimal number. I want to lock it down. And that's where random with step came in, and somebody very helpful on the GDevelop forums put me onto this one, because I was doing something else. I was doing this random in range with float, and then I was rounding it down with a separate wrapper, a longer expression. And then, as I said, thanks to the helpful forum user, I discovered random with step, which is exactly what I wanted, to be able to lock it down to increments instead of having it generate potentially very bizarre. Well, we want random, very bizarre numbers. So this was perfect. Now, one other thing, you want to make sure this is set to no. We don't want the sound playing once but looping. We want it playing once and stopping. So make sure that's off. So there we go. Now, an enhancement for this, and it's an optional thing, you might not want it, but if you want your sound to have small delays between being played, you can use a timer check to do that. Now, our scroll text timer is obviously very busy here already, and it's being constantly reset here, so we can't hang this on that. So I'm going to create a second timer. And just a reminder that if you've got events that check a timer, you need to create it somewhere higher up first or it won't work. So let me see. We're going to call this timer speak. So it's a new timer called speak. And we're going to check that timer here. Value of a scene timer speak. And we want to make sure it's greater than or equal to, let's just say half a second, so 0.5 seconds. And we're going to need to restart it. Let me copy paste this one. We're going to restart it as part of this loop as well. So when this is true, these things happen. The timer gets restarted and it has to hit 0.5 for it to all happen again. So it's all part of a loop. Now let me play this to show you what this will be like. I've forgotten how to speak. Okay, and I've used 0.5 deliberately, so those gaps are quite big. But you can play with this number. Maybe we'll try 0.3. So there we go. That makes him speak a bit slower than he was without it. So that's another way of controlling how it, well, not really how it sounds, because you're not altering the sound, but you're introducing small gaps between the sound being spoken, I guess, and that gives it a bit of a different feel. But that's optional. You don't. Let me just make a sub event, and I can just sort of tuck those away for a sec. We'll disable this. You don't need this. This just gives you a bit more control if you want it. I quite like it doing the continuous thing, but you might want it a bit slower. So it's up to you. That's there. Just remember to create it somewhere first. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you is just a bit of Jfxr. We're going to try and make it sound like a robot speaking, which with Jfxr is quite easy. So let's edit with Jfxr. Be careful with this, because if you've got a sound like my blah here, if we go edit with Jfxr, it will overwrite that sound, as I discovered earlier today when I kept losing my blah. But I'm going to show you now. I don't care, because we're at the end of the tutorial and I've got a backup anyway. So now let me warn you before we start playing around with this, it can make some pretty ear-piercing sounds. So I would advise you for this part of the video to turn the volume down ever so slightly, because I'm going to be creating a random sound and it might be a bit squeaky, and I got a bit of a shock experimenting with this. Anyway, we're going to use jump. Oh yeah, see what I mean? Now I'm trying to find a sound that would sound quite cool for our gibberish speak. Now generally with sounds that work best with just this whole thing generally, whether you're making them yourself with a microphone, whether you're sampling from your cat or dog, whether you're finding a free sound online, you want to make sure the sound is quite short, that there's a lot of activity early on with maybe a slight tail off at the end. You don't want a long sound with a slow build up and a quick sound with a lot going, a kind of top heavy sound with a lot going on early on. And Jfxr is great for making sounds like that. Well, let's go with that jump sound that we've just made here, and I'll play our little demo. So there you go. You see how easy it could be to do a robot or something in your game using Jfxr, which just sort of generates sounds for you. It's really cool. I haven't used sound in GDevelop before, and I've sort of dug into it a little bit for the purpose of this tutorial. And this is so cool for creating placeholder sounds, or even sounds, for your full game. I mean, that sounds really cool to me. So you can spend ages playing around in this and tweaking it, and they get put directly in your game. Let me just show you that actually. So now there, my blah has been replaced with that blip, but of course you can save them separately and not overwrite your blah sounds. Anyway, so that is the end of my gibberish speak tutorial. I hope you found that useful, and let me just try again. I never get tired of doing that now. I keep trying different sounds like cats and ducks and things, and it's really good fun. So anyway, I'll stop there, and thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Good day to you.